I feel it's every geek's birthright, especially on YouTube, to cover Fazbear Entertainment and the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise to a certain extent. And I'm no different. Today, guys, this is not my FNAF video, but this is a prelude to my FNAF video that I plan on doing roughly around probably, October or so. And that's because I have a question. How is it that Fazbear Entertainment always comes back? And that's a big thing is, we always joke with William Afton, it's, I always come back. But why is Fazbear Entertainment come back way more than them? Because this company is very interesting, because not only have we found out new details about the company, but also we now have even more details on potentially how long this company was, and maybe even how big it was. And that's my question. How big is Fazbear Entertainment at the time of maybe not even just of Arthur going into the MCM location, but maybe even the idea of just how big this location was around the time that the missing children incident actually happened. So let's get into it. And just to say hello, I'm Yuki. I'm the Geekiness. And if you guys want to watch geek-related content, Pokemon, anime, and all kinds of fun stuff, just don't mind, hit the subscribe button. It's down there. Look, my head's even going boop, 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 that way. And mind you guys, a lot of my videos are meant to be more chill videos where it's not visually pleasing, but it's more audio where you can hear me just talk and maybe put me in the background while you're playing video games. So if you guys want, big fancy graphics, maybe someday I'll hire an editor and maybe they'll be able to do the fancy editing. I'm more low grade and I just want to talk about what I like, guys. So let's get into it. So, right away, we understand the founding of the company was done by William Afton and Henry Emily. Or, at the very least, that's how we believe it still is. There is some rumors and theories going around now that Henry Emily was actually someone who worked at MCM underneath Edwin Murray, and that when Edwin was crashing out after the events of his wife dying, the Mimic, his child dying, that he fled with some designs and he went and joined old Willie Afton over at Fazbear Entertainment. I personally don't believe this, and I still am firmly on the side that they already had the company of Fredbear Family's Diner prior to the formation of Fazbear Entertainment and their partnership with Edwin Murray. Maybe Edwin Murray and, maybe Henry went to engineering school together or something. Because that's the only way I can explain both Edwin Murray and Henry being able to make the stuff that they make in the future. And that's the key. The idea is that, at least our theories are, not verified, but our theories, that William Afton was more the business guy, while Henry was more the person who did the animatronic thing. And that's at least how we've always thought about it. Now, mind you, I firmly am under the belief that Fazbear Entertainment was actually running Chuck E. Cheese-inspired restaurant locations prior to the events of Secret of the Mimic, and that goes into one major reason why. Because by the time we get to 79, we already see two things. First of all, Fazbear Entertainment has contractors who go to locations and basically do work. Our boy Artie was literally working for 25 hours prior to having to go to the MCM location to get the Mimic. That's not an easy shift, and that means you're going to a lot of places. I can't imagine that a single location would take Artie 25 hours to work on something. I do believe that this is something is majorly going wrong, and there's a lot of stuff to deal with. On the other hand, I also do firmly believe that to a certain extent, that we have a firm idea the locations were open prior to the events of Edwin going missing. That is because of a voice line talking about Henry wanting them to change the designs of the robots. And that is because he says that, we just do what we always do when we put teenagers in the suits. that right away tells me that it's not just a common idea that Edwin and Henry have worked together on making the spring-lock suits, but that tells me that there's several locations. Why would it matter, if you only have two robots? Why would you need more? Why would you need to make changes to how you do it? That would imply that there are more Freddy Fazbear locations, or potentially, before the company got that going, maybe more Fredbear family diners, meaning more of the Spring Bonnie animatronic suits and more of the Golden Freddy suits. And I think that we can actually kind of look at something from the original games. Here's a question. Why was there a Golden Freddy suit at the original Freddy Fazbear location? And why? Well, it's very simple why there was a Golden Freddy suit. It's because what if every Freddy Fazbear location that was open had both a Golden Freddy Fredbear and a Spring Bonnie animatronic, because they were meant for special occasions. So you had the original four animatronics on the stage performing, and then for special birthdays and occasions, real live, they would rather have them in spring-lock suits, or they would have actual employees wear the Golden Freddy or Fredbear and the Spring Bonnie animatronic suits for special occasions. Hence why when a Golden Spring Bonnie would just show up, kids didn't think anything different. This is just what happens at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So that means that there could be plenty of locations. And that could mean that by time we get to 79, that Freddy Fazbear places are already open. Now, here's what maybe some of you will say in the comment section down below. Well, that doesn't make sense. In the basement of MCM, we see a prototype Freddy Fazbear location there. That means the locations aren't open yet. But we have to keep in mind that this was designed prior to Edwin burying himself and then disappearing. That would mean that the Freddy Fazbear project is probably done, or at least what Henry and William could get from the project is already there and designed. Probably at that point, just Henry went out and designed the rest on his own, and they got the restaurant chains going. And that's the thing is, I honestly think that Edwin just was a stepping stone for both Henry and for Henry and William Afton to move the company forward. And I do believe the fact that in every single Freddy Fazbear locations across America, there was a Fredbear animatronic, and I believe there was a Spring Bonnie animatronic in the back rooms. Prepare for special occasions. That's why during the FNAF 3 phone calls, we have all the information about the Spring animatronic suits. It wasn't for the original four animatronics, such as Bonnie, Freddy, Chica, and Foxy. They were meant for the special animatronics for special occasions, such as, like I said, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. It honestly makes a bunch of sense, because Fredbear Family Diner was the launching point. And I would imagine and I'm going to bring this up because it's important, that in the cartoon, Freddy and Friends, that probably at special times throughout the program, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie would show up rather as a side character, or maybe someone who is like a side character who showed up as maybe a guiding figure throughout the series. That would make more sense because that's how kids would know about them. They were rare, but they did show up. And I love the idea. The original three animatronics were always on the stage, and Foxy, who was the bad guy in the cartoon, would always be separate in Pirate's Cove. It made sense. But, of course, we have to bring up the fact of the matter is that, well, if you have a cartoon, it's weird that you maybe are in a single state, or even the fact that you are, let's say, for instance, you are a small company. I would imagine if you have a cartoon, you better be nationwide. I would say this cartoon kind of brings you back to stuff like the old McDonald cartoons that used to exist. It would be hard to imagine that Fazbear Entertainment is so small, but they'd have this giant company. They have this giant cartoon, they have merchandise, they have lunch boxes. They got, t-shirts and hoodies and masks, the character mask. And mind you, prior to the events of the of '83, when the bite of '83 happened with the crying child, there's a little girl who has Freddy, or all the spring animatronic and or not spring, sorry, all the toy animatronics on the playground outside the location. So right away, that also implies the simple fact that the toy animatronics, in some way, form, or sense, already exist, rather as side characters, or maybe at the time they were actual toys, and that when the rebranding happened in '87, that's when they brought the toy animatronics to life with all the new tech. And that could potentially be it. But the question is, well, how, what happened? Because obviously, some point before the FNAF 3 location, which was Fazbear Frights, the entire company had to have gone bankrupt and shut down. I would even say by the time that we get to '93, during the events of the original Freddy Fazbear FNAF game, you would have to consider that probably at this point, this is the last location that's open. Because, it's run down, it's not being well kept, and this location is falling apart. And obviously, of course, that's why Michael Afton shows up here, because it's his goal to find his father. And honestly, he doesn't realize how close he was. And that's the best question is, what happened? How did they go from nationwide cartoon merchandise and everything's going them to then shutting down? Now, a lot of people will bring up that the missing children incident and probably shut them down firmly. And I'm going to have to argue, I don't think so. And I hate to put this idea out here. How many McDonald's locations do you think someone's died at? How many Burger King flea pens have you think a kid's got seriously injured in, or worst of all, gone missing in? It's not an uncommon occurrence, unfortunately. It's people die at restaurants, companies, businesses all the time. It's called an incidental death, and it happens all the time. It's not uncommon that someone just dies. And unfortunately, it's just the reality. And I just don't think that a single child, 5 children dying at a location would cause death. And even the health violations that happen from these deaths, that all the ooze and blood and all that coming out of the animatronics and the smell, I also don't think that would cause the shutting down by OSHA. It would shut down a single location, a single, franchise location, not the entire company. Something much bigger occurred during this time frame, and we don't know what. I would honestly put my money on the fact that maybe a bigger scandal happened. Something that would, or it could be the fact that this missing children incident and the potential fact that one of their founders was accused of being the one who kidnapped the children. Maybe that's what shut it down. See, I think that would be the controversial thing. What if you have this major company and the founder, probably the face of the company, maybe someone who's put the costume on thousands of times to personally be the person to bring out the cake to the kids, is secretly the one who killed the children in that location? That could potentially be what shut it down. Or it could be, maybe it's just the location we see shuts down. And maybe just throughout the 90s, when both, as we know that both the whole idea of Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz Pizza started to slowly die more and more, maybe it's potentially true that just as time went on, the whole idea of animatronic restaurants just slowly died off more and more. It's hard to say. There's never been a solid fact of how many Fazbear locations are open and how far wide Fazbear went. We do know by the time we get to Security Breach that there are major pizzaplexes across the country according to the books. And I know the books are questionable right now, especially with Secret of the Mimic, because of the whole Edwin Murray actually being much different and the whole Mimic's backstory is slightly different. But the idea that there are multiple mega pizzaplexes across the country and not just this one, meaning that the Mimic program is potentially across the country, is a terrifying idea. Now, personally, I believe that it's never going to be actually told us how big this company was, but it's a major question to ask. This company seemed huge. Were there 200 locations across all of America? Or, was Fazbear just concrete into a single location and they just sunk too much money into stuff, projects that just was too big for them? Example, a Saturday morning cartoon that maybe is just a little longer, maybe a little more expensive than you needed to do. Or, put a lot of money in merchandising that's not going to go anywhere. Now, obviously, I believe the company was much bigger than it's out to say it is. I personally am going to guess maybe 100 locations across America. Maybe bigger, or maybe just centralized around its, western part of the country. It's hard to say. Honestly, I think this is a great question, and I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Let me know, how big do you think Fazbear Entertainment was? And also, what do you think shut down the original run of Freddy Fazbear Pizzas? And why do you think that, because, obviously, I'm going to say this. If Fazbear Frights could open and not get sued into oblivion, unless they were secretly ran by Fazbear Entertainment, I just don't fully believe the idea that the company could just shut down or be open. Or, let's see. I don't think Freddy Fazbear Pizza could still be open and Fazbear Frights be allowed to exist. But, hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I am the Geek. Geek out.